Hi, I'm Tawnya Somauroo. I'm from Colorado. That is also an AI picture. It's a little creepy. But so I'm a patent attorney, which is like some narrow federal practice, but I lost my home in the Marshall Fire and very quickly thereon I was called. Um I'm a co-founder of Marshall Together, and, Marshall Together is we're like a fire survivor-led organization. We have a board of about, I don't even know how many people, 5 or 7, and we all lost our homes. And, some of the things we've done include, joining a lawsuit that was to block the cleanup early on protests. We've gotten some state bills passed, local and county. We've focused hard on getting funds for fire survivors by doing away with permit fees and taxes that are oriented around growth, because of course we're not growing, we're rebuilding, and other other state legislation around being allowed to home harden in view of HOA dues. The biggest thing I'm very proud of is the mortgage servicer legislation that we got passed working with the state legislator. Also, we have a community. We are the eyes and ears. We've kept contact with all these organizations, and we're the eyes and ears of the fire survivor community. And when there's a need, we go to the funders and the organizations and say, "Oh, this is what people need," because they don't always know and they need to hear directly from us. So, with that being said, I'm hugely honored and also very somber to be on stage with Ash and Paele. Um, I have to say that our disaster is said to be, like this record setting, you rebuilt your houses, but it's also much less complicated. And every disaster sucks, but I think ours is kind of, uh, you know, I'm 3 years and 9 months out, right, from our disaster. So, and you guys are a lot more recent. So, with that being said, please introduce yourselves and talk about your organizations as well.
All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? Ash Level. I'm the co-founder of Altadena Rising, community organizer, creative strategist, vibe reader. Um, I also serve on the Eat and Fire Collaborative Leadership Council with liaison between the long-term recovery group and community recovery group. But most of all, I'm a community member serving in Altadena's recovery, centering our Black and most vulnerable communities first.
Yeah, aloha. My name is Paele Kiakona. I am one of the co-founders of Lahaina Strong. I'm also a board member of Save Honolua Coalition and recently appointed to the Board of Water Supply with the County of Maui too. And yeah, we're an organization that was formed very shortly after the fire for multiple reasons, but initially it just started as we wanted to make sure our people didn't leave. It was already hard to sustain ourselves and live in our place because it's super expensive. Um, and a disaster like this would definitely have set people over the top and we would be seeing a mass exodus. So that's more or less why Lahaina Strong was formed. And little did we know the type of work and the trajectory that we would be taking and getting into. So never thought I would be here, that's for sure. And it's the second year in a row, so I'm super honored. And yes, mahalo, mahalo. Thank you so much for having us.
So, yeah. So, I guess I'd like to start with, where were you when the disaster hit, and how did you get pulled into this? I would call it like a calling. If you disagree, then say how you feel about it, but I felt like I was just pulled into it, and, on the moment the fire happened, I was at home. It happened quite suddenly that it was in our neighborhood, and I was calling for everyone to run away from your burning houses," and they're like, "No, no, this can't be happening." So I felt like I started project managing the evacuation of my neighborhood, and then 2 days later, the text thread got out of control, and I'm like, "Okay, we need something bigger, we need channels." So I turned to Slack, and then somehow that Slack community became, like, the connecting point for the whole community. Like, not everyone was on it, but every pocket of community ended up with a connection there, and we ended up with this huge outreach, and then people came, and it just spiraled from there. But I feel like I I had some important position by being the first one to do it, and that made everyone jump in. But anyway, what were you doing, and how did you get pulled into what you're doing now?
Yeah, I was also home. We were cooking a late dinner. And just not getting into all that. Like, obviously, we were on the news, we're getting all the calls, we're doing all the things. The fire happens all the time, so I really wasn't thinking that we needed to leave until like soot was coming in from underneath the front door. Yeah, in that moment, all day it was really windy, obviously. So we were talking to all of our communities, talking to our friends, everybody. We're really close. And when I was driving out, seeing our community just in sheer terror, really, was the moment of like activation for me because it just wasn't something wasn't adding up. It didn't feel right. Yeah, that's kind of the moment that activated me. But as we grew, just staying in community and connecting and seeing all the things that we needed to do to serve our community and make sure that everybody has as much as they can have. It's just a consistent thing.
Um, I was a lot of places during the fire, but before the fire started, the winds were crazy. We call it the Kawaula winds, and it's a legendary wind that comes every generation or so. And it's, heavily documented of this wind that would come through and basically flatten the entire town, all the trees, every structure. And that is exactly what we experienced that day. And there was, back in the day, there was obviously no satellite imagery. We couldn't really understand why these winds would happen. But and I still think to this day there isn't solid evidence to like prove this. But after witnessing what we witnessed, we saw, the hurricane south. So low pressure system south, high pressure system north, and that created the perfect conditions for it to funnel down our mountains and create the wind that day. If you were to go 20 minutes north, there was barely any wind. If you another 30 minutes south, there wasn't very much wind. It just funneled right through that mountain. So now we see that it was caused by these potential hurricanes. So it would only happen every generation or so because a category 4 hurricane that close to the islands only would happen every 50 to 100 years. But now we're seeing it happen every 5 to 10 years. So could we potentially witness something like this happening again? I think so. Given that storms that happened every generation or so are happening every other year, it seems like now. So, those are things that we need to be aware of. But as far as where I was that day, I was in town. I was trying to get to work. All the power lines were down. I couldn't get to work, so ended up just going and checking on my family, making sure everybody was okay. I went back to my home that was a little bit further north of Lahaina, and I got the call from my mother that Lahaina was on fire, that you need to go and get the boat because we have a fishing vessel that was stationed in the heart of Lahaina. Driving into Lahaina, my entire perspective and my priority changed when I saw a friend of mine towing his boat out of the area. And he jumped out of his car and he was just covered in ash and he was crying and he was like, it's not good. This is bad. Lahaina will be gone tomorrow. I said, what the hell with the boat? I went to go check on my grandmother instead. Got stuck in traffic, couldn't get it to her. By the grace of God, one of my friends was riding by on a bicycle right next to me. So I'm like, hey, I need your bike. Either you're giving it to me or I'm taking it. I need to go and check on my grandma. So I parked my truck on the side of the road and I rode my bicycle about 4 miles into town to go and make sure that my grandma was okay. Luckily, we had friends and tenants in the area that she could load up in with. And yeah, loaded up whatever we could, water, food, some of her clothes. And I told her, just meet me up north where I parked my truck. And um, she told me that multiple people came to tell her that she needed to leave. And she said, if you didn't come and tell me to leave and demand me to leave, I would not have left and I would have died. So you saved my life. Just hours after we left the house, it burned down, literally watched it burn from the shore. And it's 7, 8 generations have grew up in that home. So it's a big loss for us, but I'm sure as we get into the panel further down, every disaster is an opportunity if handled correctly. And, you know, there's a lot of blessings in disguise that have come of this disaster. And yeah, stoked to get into it.
Thank you. Um, so here's a question about every disaster has a different is like a different every community has a different is an organism and has a different soul, has a different center, has a different way that it connects and how did your communities each form? Like I mean the communities that you were representing, how do you communicate with each other? Like, how did that evolve? Did you have to go out and gather everyone to some place because they were all in different places? Or how did you make that happen after the disaster?
Everyone is obviously everywhere. A lot of the community leaders stayed back to do direct relief as soon as soon as it was happening. I still think we're figuring out how to get everyone together and do all those, it's a constant journey trying to figure out how to reach everybody when everybody is so scattered. Definitely the online is an option, especially for our generation. Like he was saying, the elders listen to us. So they may not be online, but their youth is. So that's a place that we spend a lot of time. We're out all the time. We're in all the meetings and all the places at all the community events. Just trying to be as available, accessible, responsive as possible all the time. And just continue to do that work as people are going to surface at different times as they heal. So just trying to, stay available in all the different ways.
For us, just days after the fire, with the same sentiment that I opened up with, we were afraid that our people were going to leave and they were going to be forced to move. Already scraping by as it was, so I took it upon myself, and it was easy for me to go and find my community leaders because all the community leaders are more or less my family, and we all are very close and we know each other. And it was easy to find them because the vast majority of them set up their own little hubs and distribution centers for supplies. So I took it upon myself to try and organize the organizers, for lack of a better term. And I went and got every single person that I could think of. There were county council members in this initial meeting, and I called a meeting to one of the restaurants that were closed at the time. So I brought them all in, all of my elders, all the people I look up to, all the people who have been doing this kind of work. Um, and for the record, our fire did not start on the day that the fire started. It's been 130 or 140 years in the making of a lot of inequalities within our town and our communities, of the extraction of resources, and which led up to the day, right? So it wasn't just the perfect storm that came together on that day. It was brewing for some time. And wasn't a matter of if, it was just when, and that was when. So all of the people that I gathered were all of the people who were already actively combating the things that led to August 8th. So brought them to this, our restaurant where we had this big meeting. And I stood up there in front of all of them and I looked at them and I said, I don't even deserve to really be up here. I shouldn't be up here talking to you right now. But I feel within me that I need to take it upon myself to gather all of us and get us all on the same page. There is not one, two, or three of you in this room on these tables here that can handle this situation alone. We have to work together. And if it is my generation that is going to be inheriting what is coming out of this, my generation's way forward is one of unity and one of working together. So if you guys are not setting that foundation for us to now pick up, you're leaving us issues to pick up. You're leaving us problems that we're going to have to pick up. Rather than having us inherit the problems, let's work through it together with our generation's mentality and thinking in mind. So that's where this group kind of formed. Um, a lot of the success that you are seeing now in Lahaina, a lot of those were already spoken upon in that meeting only 5 days after the fire. Like, for example, all of the legislative work that we knew was going to be important, of the land trust coming together and trying to purchase properties before outside investors came and started to swoop it up. And it was literally 2 days after the fire, there were already realtors and outside investors calling families who just lost family members saying, hey, are you willing, do you want to sell your property? Just 2 days after. Like, the anger that brew within us is what led us to some of our success. At some one point in time, we would have handled it very differently, but obviously now we see the strength of organizing, and the pen is stronger than the knife. So that's kind of how this group formulated, and ever since then we've been just building upon that very first meeting where we all came together, and we've actively been meeting still to this day, staying in touch with one another, letting everybody know what's going on. The redundancy kills. When you have one organization working on something and another working on something, and it's basically the same thing, now you guys are competing for that funding, which could go to specific locations rather than us working together. Oh, you're going to work on this? Okay, I'm going to go work on that. So that was the power of having that initial meeting, so we could all be on the same page and not, and contribute to the forward momentum rather than working simultaneously.
That's amazing. So here's something interesting to me personally, because I've been in this role of, okay, I can write. I'm okay at writing, but I'm not like a media person. I had it's how to tell your story of your community. Like, um, it's really important when you're in this role and you're connecting with all the other organizations. You're connecting with all the with the community foundation, and you're expressing the needs. That I ended up kind of being the manager of kind of the collective narrative of the fire survivors, and every time it went off astray, I had to, protect the story that, we just want to get home, and we're not just, well, I don't think you have to deal with the same thing, but we, we're not just trying to get money. We're not all rich and we're making this up. There are so many ways that the story goes off track sometimes, and you have to be really creative. You have to tell this story to reporters, to legislators, to all these different groups of people. And I didn't like at all having to do press interviews. It's not my thing, but nobody else stepped up, so I was stuck with it. But you are both way more charismatic and savvy about these things, and I just wonder what's happened, what interesting things have happened, and how have you been really creative about telling the story? And also, it's not just that you're telling it to other people, you're also reinforcing it for your community. It's part of keeping morale high and keeping hope high. So how have you each approached that?
I was not one to want to be in front of the camera ever. Um, Unfortunately, it's part of the process of making sure that we control the narrative, and that was a huge step in the very beginning of making sure that there were the proper community voices and the proper people speaking for this town and this community, rather than some random person and speaking about it and not really capturing what's actually happening on the ground. Um, we've seen so many times there was a lot of false information and misinformation being spread, which was pretty detrimental because it takes away the attention from the issue at hand. So now we have people arguing amongst themselves, oh no, what happened to the 2,000 kids who were missing? And we're like, that's not even a thing. What are you talking about? But it's taken away from what's actually going on. But controlling the narrative in the beginning was very important, so that this community has the power to really say what is happening, what's going on the ground. And shortly after the fire, I had I was the only one basically on the west side that had um Wi-Fi connection, because I lived off grid already prior, and we had Starlink, so it didn't matter if the grid went down or anything. We had solar system, we had that. So There was at one point maybe 50 to 100 people at my house just connecting and trying to get in touch with their family members. But because no one in the world knew what was happening, I took it upon myself to, make this first video to say, okay, this is what's happening on the ground. And that's kind of where I got my first initial recognition. That video went viral overnight. I got, I don't know, 2.7 million views in a couple of days. Um, and that's where I kind of built my following. But on top of that, I didn't just continue to just spout nonsense, right? I tried to get into the actual issues at hand. I tried to speak on the structures that have been keeping us where we're at, and all of these things, but trying to explain it to in a sense that our people could understand it. Utilizing this momentum, now we have news teams coming in and trying to interview us. So that gives us another layer of credibility that this type of media platform is now wanting to interview us more and more. So it gains our trust amongst this community. And again, not just spouting off nonsense, it's stuff that people can actually relate to and trying to break it down in chewable form. But there were a couple of things that we did not agree with. West Maui was opened up to tourism just 2 months after the fire, which we did not like, because we wanted to get, we had this standard that we wanted to get our people to. We wanted to get them housed. We wanted to make sure that it was safe for people to be driving around town. Like all of these things that we needed to meet before we could just go back to business as usual. So a way that we got creative is we put together a petition which got about 18,000 signatures to push back the date of the reopening. We weren't saying that we didn't want tourism back ever. We just needed some time for us to recover and heal, because people were still trying to find their family members. They didn't even know if they were found amongst those who have passed on. So we delivered the petition, fell upon deaf ears to the governor's office. But at that point, right, we were still building a foundation. Nobody knew who we were. They thought we were just a bunch of loud kids who were gonna come in with this momentum and then fizzle out through the end. So we had to remain steadfast and consistent. So we ended up going to the beach and we protested, not only the opening of tourism, but to get our people into long-term dignified housing. They were in hotels getting shuffled around every other day. And because tourism was about to open up, the hotels now want to make room for their guests. So I know family members who have moved 15 times in the span of maybe 6 months. And for you to uproot your life that many times and move to another location with no, um, you know, no stove, you don't have a dishwasher, you don't have a clothes, a washer and a dryer for all of these things. So, and then to uproot it multiple times to go move into something like that again, there was no room for healing. Like, you can't get to a point of healing if you're still unsure that maybe the next day you're going to get a note under your door that says you have to move. So we took to the beach and we demanded long-term dignified housing, and that catapulted us into this whole other world. But that was a way that we needed to get creative, because as protesters, I don't even like that word protesters. I like the word protectors. Um, as protectors, if you're not gaining the attention, then you're not doing it correctly. And we weren't doing it to gain attention, right? We wanted to get stuff done. But for you, just like controlling the narrative, for you to be successful in getting the funding, making moves, having government officials listen to you, then you have to get their attention. And through that process, we eventually got multiple things, which I'll try and get into a little bit more so later. But building connections with people like our mayor and even the governor at this point, like we're able to have conversations, we can message, and like those are super important to any forward momentum. Sorry, I went off on a tangent, so I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We have a lot of similarities, like organizing the organizers and reaching out to the people that have already been like in leadership roles in these positions, which I think is like a massive thing to communities that haven't been through this yet, to like really know who your leaders are and know who your neighbors are. But a way in which we got creative is also very similar. Like social media is a powerful tool, especially right now, and especially when the rest of the world wants to tell their story, but we know what the actual story is. Also, when all these different organizations are coming into your community to say that they are here to help, and none of us have ever heard of these people. So creating the space as a centralized hub for and by the community was really important. It's really how we initially started to make sure that we were, again, like controlling our own narrative, and continue to do so. And like also that, we're able to connect in those ways and learn from each other. Um, I think creatively too is just like align with people that are doing the work. Like don't just, take it for what it is. Like if you know someone's doing the work and they can push you past a barrier, push a family past a barrier, like create your own lane in a way this in how this works because obviously there's no roadmap as much as folks want to say that there is. So just find the people that are getting things done.
I found it's just important to kind of make room because you never know when someone appears and they start talking to you and you're like, this person feels like they're going to make some contribution. You have no idea what it is and you could be completely surprised by it later. But people jump in, people jump out. And then, finding your community too is really bizarre because even like 2.5 years later, I'm finding people I never met. And I'm like, where have you been? Like, oh, yeah, they're at a different phase with things. And you never stop hearing the kaleidoscope of stories. Like, it's so humbling. So, um, I guess here's another we have not tons of time left. I'm wondering, ask you, would you rather talk about some of the work you've done and how you've gotten there, or would you rather talk about like how you sort of help manage your community's like hope and emotions and fatigue as you go through it? Um, I would love to hear about the Airbnb legislation.
Yeah. If you are comfortable, I would love for you to talk about there can be a lot of opposing people to the success in your leadership for what your people want, need, and deserve, and how really difficult that can be to navigate at times. And if you're comfortable, Paele, great. If you're not, that's okay too. I was trying to be subtle, which doesn't ever work with me, as you can imagine. Okay. So in your advocacy, in particular with Lahaina Strong, it has been a very rough 2 years. When we first met you, you were camping out on the beach. You guys were protesting, and it was so surreal to have just had your fire, and yet there's people walking down with their cocktails and their, like really my demographic, and holding a cocktail in their bathing suit, vacationing around you. Lahaina Strong has been so impactful in actually giving a voice, but also not just being in opposition with local government, but working with local government and having the backing of Mayor Bisson and his team too, which may not have come naturally at the beginning. I do know, but you have had to show a tremendous amount of courage. And so I don't think most people here know the story of how big you are going up against very big interests, and it's happening in LA too in a different way. And so, but very similar housing and water. So if you can just talk about, because there's been a personal price, and every time I turn around though, you're when you're on social media, you're actually pushing back, and that can be a hard thing to do, but worth it for your people. So I just want people to hear that from you. That's why. Is that more direct? Okay.
Everything she said.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's been difficult, but what keeps me going and what makes it not easy for me, but makes it makes me able makes it come more naturally is because I'm willing to die for this. I love my place so much. If I could give my life right now and have everything be the way that it's supposed to be, I would do so in a heartbeat. That's the commitment and the love that I have for my place and my community. And our success comes from that. Exactly. That my community members share that sentiment, and they're strong, they're fierce, and we don't make a move without their approval first. We don't make a move unless it's addressing a need within the community. So for many people, they don't really know, but the we were once a sovereign nation. Our kingdom was overthrown. and we were forced into this lifestyle that was obviously foreign to us, but very quickly. So as a result, um, many of the Western ideologies about owning land and all of this stuff was foreign. So it was the local people were taken advantage of. That led to multiple inequalities, and for the most part, mainly it's our lack of access to water, specifically in Maui County. Um, Even though water is a public trust resource, it is largely owned by private purveyors and private interests. About 77% of the water on the west side of Maui is owned by private purveyors. And it was back in those times when things were transitioning, but the the distribution of that water is what's owned from the private purveyors. So the water itself they do not own, but because it's being funneled into this place, that's how they own that water. So this leads to us not having enough affordable housing in our place because we have to leave a specific amount of water within the streams for the stream life, because our entire economy is reliant upon tourism, and without the natural beauty of the place and us upholding and maintaining that, there's nothing for them to come and see. Um, so for multiple reasons, yes, that's one reason also, but it's more so for the community aspect of why water needs to stay in the streams. But long story short, there is not enough water for us to build housing. We have multiple turnkey ready parcels ready to start building, but we don't have adequate water to supply these places because largely owned by private purveyors and private interests. So this means that even if we wanted to build affordable housing, we can't because we don't have the water to do so. But we have all of this remaining housing after the fire, and we started to see as we dug into it a little bit deeper that 87% of that housing was tied up in short-term rentals. And now you got an entire community, and the only place that burnt down were community, like that's where the vast majority of the community was, and that's where it was burnt down. So now we have these local people who are renters, owners, from spectrum, one end to the other end of the spectrum, but more so just the community members did not have a place to stay. That's why they were housed in the hotels. Even if they wanted to potentially go and seek some of this housing up north, they can't because they're wrapped up in short-term rentals. The short-term rental industry was making a whole lot of money more than renting out long-term. So obviously they weren't too keen on allowing local people to stay in their place. So we saw this inequality. We saw that this was an issue. So we took it upon ourselves to start dabbling in legislation. And we started to realize because of that inequality that it's it's prevalent throughout the entire state. So we said, okay, maybe we now need to just work on changing this law to allow these places to be transitioned to long-term housing that is currently there. And we went and, we thankfully we had people who were very educated in legislation, knowing what happens. 2 years ago, I didn't realize that this happens every single year, and we're all just complaining about things, and we don't even know that we got to go and fight for legislation and be lobbyists, right? Um, and we were successful in killing a lot of bills because many legislators were trying to utilize the Lahaina fires as an opportunity to pass something that they wanted for their own personal needs, even though it did not serve this Lahaina community, and painted it as Lahaina. There were over 200 bills that we were keeping track of on the beach, mind you. We're doing this on the beach. We had an entire office set up, little tent on the side with solar panels. We had batteries, we had computers, printers, everything you needed. But we were pretty well organized for us to be camping on a beach as homeless people. But yeah, over 200 bills, and we actually had to work on killing multiple of those bills because they were detrimental. But one of those bills that many people know about is the SB 2919, which gives the counties the authority to phase out short-term rentals. Every county is different. Some of them rely a little bit more on it. Some of them don't really care if they're making an upcoming in their communities. So let's let the counties decide what they want to do. So we were a huge part in passing that key piece of legislation that they've been attempting to pass for the last 15 years. And, we kind of helped to bring it home. Um, and, right after the fire, Mayor Bisson utilized that momentum on this bill to even start implementing it on a county level already. So we're actually in the process now of potentially returning about almost 7,000 units back to the local housing market. And that's a huge it's a huge increase to our housing market there. I think it's like a 14 or 17% increase instantaneously. And it would take the county about, what, 50 years or so to build that amount of housing. So it's a huge win. We're not there yet. There's, you know, there's a lot of push and pull between so many things because we do have such a huge population of people who are not from Hawaii owning property in Hawaii. So anytime you have something that has to do with taking away their money, they show up in droves. But our community also shows up in droves, and because they have that trust for us. Um, so it's getting there. It's going through a couple more readings, and we're going to try and push it through. But at the end of the day, it is a victory regardless because it's such a contentious issue and everybody's paying attention to it. They will know, the entire community will know if this passes or if it doesn't. And we have been crucial in educating them. We always have social media posts. We do all of these workshops to make sure that everybody's educated on the process, what's happening. Um, but for us, we see it as success because if the law doesn't pass, then we'll change the lawmaker, and we can utilize that. And we have been, for the most part, pretty level-headed against, these certain individuals. But we've gotten to the point already, like, if we know that everything has changed. Every single person in this room knows that things have changed a lot in the last 10 to 20 years. So why are we still doing things the same? You know, if you're going to continue to do things the same, then obviously you're the problem and you need to change. And if you're not going to change, we'll change you out. And that's
Yeah, I'm gonna just add to that too. I think that goes for like people in law, but also like when it comes to case management, when it comes to every single layer of disaster, like the regular way is not gonna work. Like you have to push yourself past the boundary. You have to stop, don't stop at no. Like there are ways to push and get past whatever it is the barrier is. If you just stop, this thinking of which has held us behind for so long and figure out how to move forward, because this is going to continue to happen and you might as well just educate and teach yourself a new way now because it's going to happen again.
I don't want to talk too much, but yeah, that's been a big victory for us. But that's not. It's hard because that's not the only thing that we've been working on because it's such a contentious and very um, big issue. It gets a lot of eyes and a lot of attention, but we've been, we go through a lot of hate, a lot of slander. I guess it just comes with the territory, but we do a lot of stuff on the ground too. We've been doing energy work. We're giving the community an opportunity to say what exactly they want their energy systems and their grid to look like. We partnered with NREL, National Renewable Energy Laboratories, and it's pretty unprecedented that they would go to a grassroots organization. So we've been working heavily with them on stuff, and we're getting, things are moving forward with that. We've been working on a neighborhood watch system that we've been helping lead. There's a lot of theft right now in and around neighborhoods of people who have tools and wood and whatever laying out and about. People are coming and just stealing everything. So we've been working on a neighborhood watch. Um, I mean, there's so many things I can't even cover them all right now, but we've been, Maui's economic recovery. So we've been trying to give opportunities for people to sell their products and all of those things. So it's a full scope of things. And that's the reason why I believe we have this trust with our community, is because we're not just focusing, like we're trying to recreate what we want our community to look like. And we would not be successful had it not been for them. There are people that have given testimony that never give testimony in their life. Hundreds, thousands of people showing up, unions coming together that have never worked together because of the initial tasks that we've been, pushing forward. Um, and I do want to give a special shout out to our mayor. This is the first time in history, I think, that our local people have been advocating for something that a mayor or a legislator or a government official has put forward. At least in my lifetime, and he was a huge part in that. And I've never had a leader in our communities, in our town, that is community first. It's always you weigh economics above all else first, and then everything else kind of falls and trickles in. But he weighs community, environment, culture, all of these things just as much as the economics of the place. And for the people first, You guys all love Hawaii, I know. If you guys have been to Hawaii, you guys love it. Yes, it's beautiful aesthetically, but everybody loves Hawaii because of the culture and the people. And if we're not sustaining and we're not recreating and keeping that in this place, then you're just going to another tropical island that has no meaning and no feeling, you know. I think we should try to recreate that in all of our situations for anybody going in communities that have experienced this, that love, that aloha, that helping one another. It's the only way we're going to get forward and move forward, is to be there for one another. Put our differences aside, put the economics aside. We need to be together.
Amen. Amazing.
Thank you. And thank you so much. And one of the things that we're really hoping when we first walked into Altadena, we were standing on the street with Tim Carpenter was there and John Mayo was there. And it was so, I loved that we heard, one of the first things we heard was the pride of the history of the Black community in Altadena, and how people wanted to not only preserve that, but maybe since this terrible thing happened, like maybe you can actually like move the needle back up to that 40% home ownership that we saw in the 80s, Like if this terrible thing happens, then why not, find a way back? It's rare to see communities that have been harmed to get things back that they deserve. And so it's one of the reasons why it was really important to us that you come here to talk about Lahaina Strong, and that you sit here too with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Paele.